What if I told you that everything you think is impossible is just an outdated program running in your mind? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you're going to discover how to rewrite the code that's been limiting your life and transform your mind from your worst enemy into your greatest ally. This is going to change everything you thought you knew about yourself. What you call a limit today is really just an old program in your mind that you can rewrite. Imagine for an instant that your mind is like a silent computer that works day and night without rest, executing programs that were installed long before you chose who you wanted to be. Some of those programs propel you forward, but others stop you without you noticing. Each repeated thought, each word you accepted as truth, each experience that marked you as saved in the deepest part of your mind, and today determines what you believe you can or cannot achieve. What's surprising is that just like obsolete software can be updated, you can also reprogram your mind and open a completely new path toward your greatness. This audiobook is not an empty promise. It's a tool, a map that will show you how to break with those old invisible codes that control your life and how to write your own. Here you'll discover how to convert each challenge into mental training, how to transform emotion into fuel, and how to make your mind go from being your worst enemy to becoming your greatest ally. Because great challenges are not overcome with brute force. They're overcome with clarity of thought, with mental discipline, with mind reprogrammed to always win. And that's the path you begin today. Chapter 1. The Invisible Codes That Control Your Life. We live convinced that we decide each thing we do. But the truth is that most of our choices are automatic, guided by invisible codes that were written in our mind years ago and that continue functioning today like an autopilot. Psychologists call this mental programming, and neuroscience confirms it with a fascinating concept, neural networks. Each time you repeat a thought or an action, a connection is reinforced in your brain, as if you were carving a path in the earth until that path becomes the main highway. That's why when you try to change a habit, you feel resistance, because your mind insists on using the highway it already knows. Think of someone who grew up hearing phrases like, money is dirty, the rich are bad, or you can't have everything in life. Those words seem innocent, but they install themselves as invisible codes. And each time that person wants to advance financially, their mind generates guilt or fear, sabotaging the attempt. Albert Ellis, father of rational emotive therapy, explained that it's not the facts that limit us, but the beliefs we accept about those facts. Another clear example we find in sports. Muhammad Ali said that he repeated phrases like, I am the greatest long before getting to the ring, and that repetition was not gratuitous arrogance. It was a conscious process to install a mental code that would allow him to act like a champion, even before being won. Today's sports psychology recognizes that visualization and positive self-talk change the way the brain interprets reality, activating the same areas as when the real experience is lived. But not everything occurs in extraordinary scenarios. Observe something every day. Someone who each time they face an important meeting feels nervous because in their past a teacher humiliated them when speaking in public. That memory became an invisible code, a trigger that each time it repeats sends a signal of danger to their body, accelerating the heart, blocking the voice, sabotaging the present with a file from past. What you must understand is that these invisible codes are not a condemnation. They're simply programs that were installed and that can be replaced. As Joe Dispenza said, if you want a new result, you must think in a new way, and that means that to overcome any challenge, the first thing is to identify what program is running in you without your permission. That's the beginning of all real change. Recognizing that you are not your thoughts, you are who can observe them, question them, and rewrite them. In the next chapter, you'll discover something that will change your way of seeing the mind forever. You'll understand that it's not an uncontrollable mystery, but a system that can be programmed in your favor. And that's where everything begins to transform. Chapter 2. Your mind as a programmable system. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a computer. You have hardware, which is your brain, the physical part, and you have software, which are the thoughts, beliefs, habits, and memories that make it function. If the software is full of errors, no matter how powerful a machine is, it will give wrong results. Now think of two distinct levels of that system. The first is your conscious mind, the part that reasons, that makes quick decisions, that can analyze what's happening in the moment. It's the one you're using right now to listen to these words. But there's another part, much more powerful, silent, and constant. Your subconscious mind. That's like the operating system that runs in the background, controlling more than 90% of what you do each day without you realizing it. How you walk, how you talk, how you react, and even what you believe is possible or impossible. A clear metaphor is that of an iceberg. What you see on the surface is the conscious mind, small, barely 10%. But below the water, hidden and gigantic, is the subconscious moving all the way to the iceberg. You can try to push hard on the top part, but if you don't change what's underneath, you'll never manage to truly move it. This explains why so many people repeat over and over that they want to change. They say, I want to be rich, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy. But at the same time, they have recorded in the subconscious a program that tells them, you can't, that's not for you, it's too difficult. And guess who always wins? The deepest voice, the one that's been programmed for years. Think of someone who wants to quit smoking. With the conscious mind, they say, I want to quit. But in the subconscious, the idea remains recorded, I need the cigarette to calm down. If those two orders clash, the subconscious wins. And the same happens with wealth, with health, with love, with any area of life. The good news is that just as software can be rewritten, your mind can also be reprogrammed. What you think repeatedly becomes your reality. Each sustained thought, each mental image, each intense emotion is like a line of code that you're recording in your subconscious, and when the program changes, your life changes. Imagine that you plant the same seed every day. At the beginning, it seems insignificant, but over time, an immense tree grows that changes the entire landscape. That's how your repeated thoughts work. Each one is a seed that's building your future reality, whether you want it or not. That's why understanding this principle is crucial. Your mind is not an untamable mystery. It's a system that responds to what you repeat, to what you believe, and to what you feel, and you can take control of that system. In the next chapter, you'll discover how to identify the hidden programs that sabotage you, those phrases you repeat without realizing it, those beliefs that seem like absolute truths, but that in reality are invisible chains. Prepare yourself because once you see them, you won't be able to ignore them again. Chapter 3. Identifying the programs that sabotage you. If until now you understood that your mind functions as a programmable system, the next step is inevitable. Discovering what programs you have installed are sabotaging your life, because you can't change what you don't know. A limiting thought doesn't arrive with a warning. It doesn't appear in red saying, careful, this thought destroys your future. On the contrary, it disguises itself as absolute truth, as common sense, as an internal voice that seems to protect you, but that in reality locks you up. Think of it this way. When you were a child, perhaps you heard phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees. Study something safe because the other thing is too risky. Don't aim so high so you don't get frustrated. Those phrases, although they came from people who loved you, were recorded in your subconscious as orders. And today, each time you try to take a big step, that voice appears to remind you of them and break your advance. A classic example is in sports. There are athletes with great talent, but who before a competition think, I'm going to fail. I'm sure I'll get nervous. The others are better than me. And what happens? They sabotage themselves, not because they don't have the capacity, but because the internal program already dictated the result. The same happens in daily life. When someone thinks, I'm not enough, they start to act as if they weren't. They speak with less security, make small decisions, avoid big challenges, and in the end, that thought confirms itself in their reality, not because it was true, but because they believed it with so much force they converted it into truth. Here comes a practical exercise. For one complete day, listen to your internal dialogue. Each time you think about a challenge, a dream, a goal, ask yourself what voice appears in my head. If you hear things like, this is very difficult, I'm not capable, this is not for me, congratulations. You just detected a program that sabotages you. It may seem uncomfortable at first, because you'll discover that your mind repeats those phrases more often than you think. But that's the first step, putting light where before there was darkness. When you see the enemy, it's no longer invisible, and therefore it's no longer invincible. Many psychologists call this the internal script. It's the hidden screenplay that dictates how you act in the face of life. The difference between those who advance and those who stay behind is not that some have luck and others don't, but that some rewrite their script while others repeat it without questioning it. Here I want to leave you with a powerful reflection. Each time you say a limiting phrase, it's not your real voice. It's an echo of something someone taught you, but you didn't choose it. And if you didn't choose it, you have the right to change it. In the next chapter, you'll learn to rewrite that internal voice, to replace the phrases of defeat with phrases of power. And it won't be repeating empty words. It will be creating a new mental script that transforms your way of thinking, speaking, and acting. Chapter 4. Rewriting the internal voice. Now that you've already identified the programs that sabotage you, the moment has come to rewrite the voice that keeps them alive. That voice that repeats in your mind is not neutral. Each word becomes an order that your subconscious executes without questioning. That's why, if you don't change it, you'll keep walking with the same background music you never chose. Think of your internal voice as the script of a theater play. If the script says a protagonist always loses, the story will end the same over and over. But if you rewrite the script, the ending changes, even though the actors are the same. A powerful example is that of Helen Keller. She was born without seeing or hearing, and her first programming was absolute limitation. However, when she learned to communicate, she decided to change the voice of impossibility for that of purpose. Her new internal phrase was, "My darkness doesn't prevent me from illuminating others." That transformed voice led her to inspire millions. Do this practical exercise. Write one of the limiting phrases you recognized in the previous chapter. Now change it for an affirmation that gives you back the power. If your mind tells you, "I don't have discipline," change it to "I am training my discipline every day and it strengthens like a muscle." If your dialogue says, "Nobody supports me," change it to "I am capable of advancing, even though I start alone and support will come later." The key is in repetition. The subconscious mind functions like fertile earth. It doesn't question what you plant, but it will take care of making it grow. If you plant phrases of defeat, you'll harvest limits. If you plant phrases of power, you'll see opportunities flourish where before there was nothing. Look at the example of Muhammad Ali. Beyond the ring, he repeated himself, "I am the greatest," even before being champion. That auto-suggestion was not vanity, it was programming. His internal voice was written with so much force that he ended up convincing the entire world. Now ask yourself, what voice are you going to choose as narrator of your life? Because your story doesn't depend on what happened, but on how you decide to tell it to yourself. In the next chapter, you'll discover why words are not enough if they don't carry emotion, and how true change is imprinted when what you say you accompany with what you feel. Chapter 5. Emotion as fuel for programming. Words are powerful, but if they're pronounced without emotion, they stay floating in the air. The subconscious mind is not impressed with empty phrases. It's impressed with the energy that accompanies them. That energy is called emotion, and it's the fuel that records your programming with fire in your interior. Think about this. When you remember the most important moments of your life, what's the first thing that comes back to your mind? It's not just the facts. It's the emotions that accompanied them. Fear and a fall, joy and a triumph, sadness and a loss. Emotion makes those memories tattooed in your memory. The same thing happens with your affirmations and with your internal dialogue. If you repeat, "I am capable," but you say it without feeling it, your mind perceives it as noise. But if you say it with your heart beating strong, with images in your mind and with sincere emotion, your subconscious takes it as an indisputable truth. A clear example is that of Frida Kahlo. Despite living with constant physical pain, she transformed that pain into art and into strength. She didn't simply tell herself, "I endure my suffering." She converted it into intense colors, into passion, into emotions that gave life to her paintings, and thus reprogrammed the way she saw her reality. Do this exercise. Think of a goal you want to achieve. Close your eyes. Imagine that you've already achieved it. Hear the sound of congratulations. Feel the pride course through your chest. Look at the details of that moment with intensity. Now repeat your affirmation from that emotion and observe how the force with which your mind receives it changes. Science also backs it up. Neuroscience researchers have proven that when an affirmation is accompanied by emotion, neurotransmitters are released that reinforce the neural connection. That means that each time you visualize with emotion, you're literally building a new circuit in your brain. Always remember what you rehearse with emotion and your mind prepares as experience in your life. That's why great athletes visualize their victories not as a game of imagination, but as deep programming where emotion gives them advantage even before stepping on the field. In the next chapter, you'll discover how each challenge you face not only tests your programming, but becomes a perfect opportunity to forge your identity as someone who always overcomes what they set out to do. Chapter 6. Challenge after challenge. Creating the identity of the one who overcomes. Now that you understand how emotion feeds your programming, you need to take it one step further, because it's not enough to repeat powerful phrases or imagine victory scenarios. If your daily behavior continues being the same as always, your identity doesn't change. Each challenge you face in life is an opportunity, a door that opens so your mental programming stops being theory and becomes real experience. When you decide to face a challenge, even if it's small, you're sending a forceful message to your subconscious. This is the kind of person I am. Repetition is key, but not just repetition of words, but repetition of actions. Just as a musician doesn't become a virtuoso by rehearsing for a single day, you don't forge the identity of one who overcomes with an isolated effort. You need to chain victories, as minimal as they may seem, because each one strengthens a conviction that you can handle the next one. Think of Thomas Edison. It wasn't his first attempt that gave him the light bulb. It was more than 1,000 failed tests, and each attempt was an overcome challenge in his mind because he didn't see it as failure. He saw it as progress. That mentality made him into someone who never gave up. Try it yourself. Choose a challenge you've been postponing. It can be as simple as getting up an hour earlier to read, or as challenging as starting a project that always scared you. Overcome it once and repeat it until your mind understands that behavior is already part of your identity. Remember this. Your identity is not built in moments of comfort. It's forged in the battles you choose to fight and overcome. Each conquered challenge is a brick in the building of your new programming. And here's a warning. If you don't face challenges, your mind will seek to invent excuses to keep you where you are, because comfort is its favorite refuge. That's why each time you choose to face a challenge, you're breaking the cycle and saying, I decide who I am, not my fears. In the next chapter, you'll discover your silent enemy, the one that tries to drag you back to the old, and how to recognize the signs of relapse before they destroy what you built. Chapter 7. The silent enemy, returning to the old. All progress has a price, and that price is constant vigilance. Because even though you've advanced a lot, even though you've reprogrammed your mind with new ideas and new actions, there will always exist a silent enemy, that internal whisper that invites you to return to the old. The human mind has a natural tendency to seek comfort. It's a survival mechanism. Save energy, avoid risks, take refuge in the known. But the known is not always the best. In fact, almost always the known is precisely what kept you limited. The danger is that this enemy doesn't appear with red flags or with thunderous alarms. It appears disguised as innocent thoughts. Just this once doesn't matter. Tomorrow I'll resume it. I've already done enough. I deserve to rest. Phrases that seem harmless, but that open the door to relapse. Look at what happens in the gym with so many people. They start motivated in January, but 1 week of tiredness, a trip, or an excuse is enough, and suddenly what was a habit becomes a memory. That fall doesn't occur because the body can't, but because the mind seeks to return to the old pattern. The secret is in recognizing the signs of relapse. You discover yourself postponing what you used to do with energy. Do you notice your internal dialogue starting to justify itself more than usual? You catch yourself thinking, I already know it, I don't need to do it anymore. Those are alarms. To neutralize this enemy, you need to create systems, not just depend on your willpower. A system is having a fixed routine, a visual reminder, a support group, or a public commitment. They're structures that sustain your new programming, even on days of weakness. Imagine a climber who places safety ropes, not because they plan to fall, but because they know the risk exists. Likewise, your systems are the ropes that prevent a stumble from returning you to the ground of mediocrity. Remember, returning to the old is easiest, but advancing is what defines you. It's not about never falling, but about getting up faster each time. In the next chapter, you'll learn how to overcome what seems impossible, and you'll discover that even the biggest challenges can be dismantled as long as you have the adequate mentality and the correct strategy. Chapter 8. Overcoming what seems impossible. When you hear the word impossible, what image appears in your mind? For many, it's a high wall, an obstacle that can't be climbed. For others, it's a weight so great, it's not even worth trying. But the truth is that impossible is nothing more than a mental label, a way for your brain to protect you from effort, from failure, and from the unknown. The great advances of humanity were called impossible before being achieved. Flying was impossible. Sailing the ocean without seeing land was impossible. Curing certain diseases was impossible until someone decided to question that word and divide the challenge into small steps. That's the secret. The impossible stops being so when you fragment it. If you look at the complete mountain, it seems intimidating. But if you concentrate your energy on the next step and then on the one that follows, suddenly you realize that you've already traveled a path that at the beginning seemed insurmountable. Think of the case of Nujat Ali, a Yemeni girl who at 10 years old faced what seemed impossible, freeing herself from a forced marriage in society that didn't give voice to women. The entire system was against her, but she took a small but decisive step. She presented herself alone in a tribunal and asked for divorce, something no girl had done before. That small step ignited a spark that inspired changes in the law and opened the way for thousands more. So it happens with any challenge. The weight disappears when you stop seeing the totality and you focus on the part you can move today. Your immediate action, your decision of this instant. Another key is in the mentality. When you tell yourself, this is impossible, your brain turns off the lights of creativity. But if you change the question to, how could I make it possible? Then your mind begins to look for alternatives. As Thomas Edison said, who tried more than 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb, I didn't fail, I discovered 1,000 ways that didn't work. The impossible challenge stops being so the moment you decide to face it with another perspective, because the mind doesn't distinguish between what it imagines and what it lives. If you can mentally rehearse victory, you're preparing your nervous system to reach it in reality. Remember, the impossible is not conquered in one day, but is defeated one step at a time. In the next chapter, you'll discover how to convert your mind into your best ally. Because overcoming challenges is not just about fighting against yourself, but about learning to work with your own mind as a powerful partner that propels you forward. Chapter 9. Converting your mind into your best ally. Until now, we've talked about fighting against limiting thoughts, about reprogramming the internal voice, about dominating emotions, but here arises a powerful question. Do you really want to live your whole life fighting with your mind? The truth is that your mind was not born to be your enemy. It's an instrument designed to protect you, to guide you, to amplify your capacities. The problem is that most have let it function on autopilot, and a pilot without direction will always crash. Converting your mind into your best ally means teaching it to walk by your side instead of dragging you backwards. How is this achieved? The first step is attention. What you attend to grows. If your attention is on problems, they expand. If your attention is on solutions, your mind begins to generate paths. The second step is emotion. Remember we mentioned that what is felt records stronger than what is thought? Well, here's the key. Each time you associate a positive emotion with a new thought, your mind starts to reinforce it as a real pattern. For example, if each time you visualize yourself achieving a goal you feel pride, gratitude, or joy, your brain saves that scene as a lived experience, and then your mind starts to push you to repeat it. The third step is repetition. Nothing is installed in your system with just once. Just as a muscle strengthens with sets and repetitions, your mind is programmed with constancy. Repetition is not punishment. Repetition is power, because what you repeat unceasingly ends up being part of you. Look at the case of Roger Bannister. For decades, experts said it was impossible to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. The collective mind believed it until he in 1954 achieved the unthinkable. Do you know what happened afterwards? In less than a year, dozens of athletes achieved it too, because the mind, upon seeing a new reference, becomes an accomplice of the possible. When you transform your mind into your ally, you stop feeling like you're fighting uphill. You start walking with an army inside you that repeats, yes, you can continue. You're going in the right direction. And that changes everything. In the next chapter, you'll understand how to think like a winner and live like a winner. A closing that will unite all the pieces of this path. So your life is not just an attempt, but a permanent victory. Chapter 10. The mentality that never loses. Everything you've learned up to here has a purpose. It's not about accumulating ideas, but about building within you a mentality that never loses. A mentality that never loses doesn't mean you never stumble, because stumbles are inevitable. It means that each stumble you use is a step, that each defeat you convert into training, that each error you transform into wisdom. Think of it this way. In a chess match, a beginner gets frustrated when losing a piece, but a master smiles because they know each move gives them information to win the complete game. That's life when your mind is well programmed. You never lose, you either win or learn. The true difference between those who live defeated and those who live in victory is not in talent, nor in resources, nor in opportunities. It's in the mentality. A mind that believes in defeat attracts it. A mind that believes in victory builds it. The mentality that never loses is trained every day, repeating what you've learned here, observing your thoughts, consciously choosing your internal dialogue, dominating emotions before they dominate you, and keeping yourself sharp even when everything is going well. When you unite all these pieces, your mind becomes your greatest wealth, an engine that never turns off and that pushes you to live like a true winner. And remember, this is just the beginning. If you want to keep strengthening your path, I invite you to also listen to my other audiobooks, You Against Your Excuses, where you'll discover how to silence the voice that sabotages your destiny and master your thinking and always win, where you'll learn to convert your mind into a battlefield where you always come out victorious. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel right now. Hit that notification bell and leave a comment below telling me which limiting belief you're going to rewrite starting today. Because what's coming in each audiobook is not entertainment, it's transformation. And only who transforms their mind can transform their life forever. I'll see you in the next video, champion.